the owner of gyms, the owner of real estate, the maker of hot moms in suburban New Jersey.
Don't get distracted by the hundreds of other things that are going on in our industry.
So take big risks when you're young. You know, U.S. bankruptcy law, not that bad. Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. Today we have left the gym world and we are in the gym galaxy. I'm here with a very special guest. His name is Brian Bott. He is the owner of gyms, the owner of real estate, the maker of hot moms in suburban New Jersey.
I'm definitely going to add that to my Instagram as soon as I leave. Very good, man. Thanks.
All right. I met you because you trained my mother-in-law. And then I heard a little bit about your business, and it was kind of unique based off of the type of business I was running at the time, which was a large group training model. Tell me a little bit about your gym and the type of training you do.
So we specialize in designing individual programs for each one of our members. And rather than doing that in a one-on-one, one coach, one client environment, we do 90% of our business semi-private. So for us, that's 1 to 4 people per coach, but still on individual programs. So you hit the nail on the head. A good amount of our clients are moms that want to come in. They want to look better, feel better, move better, have more energy, train, but schedules don't always permit jumping into a class that starts at 7 a.m. every day. So we do an initial evaluation with them, kind of go over what their goals are, write them out their plan, and then they can come in anytime that we're open. So we open at 5:30, we close at about 7. Anytime between those hours that they want to make an appointment with a coach, they can come in and get trained on that program. Doesn't matter whether I'm there to coach them or any of our other coaches, their plan's the plan. So it makes it a little bit more flexible for them and a little bit easier on us.
And so I can just show up at like 10:30 your gym, start training. I don't need an appointment. I don't need a schedule.
We do it by appointment. I mean, if you called, a lot of people will call and say like, hey, like, can anybody take me at 11? And we'll look and say like, hey, John's full at 11, but can you do 10 or noon? And then we do it that way. So it's not really at any point, but as long as you call ahead of time and make the appointment, people can roll in whenever they want.
And just so people could go stock your gym, what's the actual name of your gym?
That would help. It's Aspire Fitness. We're in Colts Neck, New Jersey, and Rumson, New Jersey.
I got your website up here in case you want to tell.
Yeah, in case we want to reference.
You need to look at your location.
It's the Jersey Shore without all the fist pumping and all the extra stuff.
So you run 2 locations. You got one in Colts Neck, one in Rumson. It's pretty rare that we find a gym owner running multi-location that doesn't want to pull their hair out. Like, what can you?
It's too late for me, man. It already happened.
So it looks like you lost it already.
Yeah, I lost.
No. So talk to me about what that was like going from 1 to 2.
The best way that it was described to me when I first started talking to people is just to be cautious because it halves your strengths and doubles your weaknesses. So the things that we got away with not having systems for and just kind of getting done on the fly were starting to get dropped. So it kind of just forced you to tighten those things up a little bit. So, when you have one location, if something needs to get done and you're there, you can kind of just handle it and move on. As soon as you have 2 locations, now you have to separate your best coaches. You have to, all those things that you take for granted in having one location, you just need to kind of step back and redo from that. But it was more so of the day-to-day system things that needed to get done, that once we had 2 locations, it became a little bit more difficult to just you couldn't wing it anymore. There are a lot of the things that we were just winging and doing a good job of it. But once we had 2, we had to make sure that stuff was tightened up a little bit.
So can you talk about like the size of your gym when you opened your second? Like what was your original look?
Yeah, so we started in Colts Neck in 2015. It's just about 3,000 square foot, super not laid out to what you would typically imagine a gym looking like. We don't have high ceilings. We don't have walls to throw med balls against or any of that stuff. It was kind of an office space that we made work. We got that to about 150 members. COVID hit. Obviously, we took a huge dip when that happened. But it did provide us the opportunity to open the second location in Rumson. That's how we came across that location. Someone had opened it, redid the whole building. Very nice, high ceilings, beautiful. I'm sure some people might have seen pictures from inside of there.
Yeah.
But that facility is also 3,000 square foot, but it's just one big open box. There's nowhere to hide. We can see everything, very clear sight lines. And so I mean, that was our decision at that point was, hey, Rumson, super affluent area. Every other gym in the area was what you described. It was either a CrossFit facility or a studio-based model where it was yoga, Pilates, those type of things. But there was nowhere to go in and do regular periodized out, written out for you strength training, right? It was either CrossFit or Pilates. There was nothing in between where, hey, I can get something customized out for me. A lot of other boutique type setups where it was like, hey, it's one guy running it and he can try to train people here and there, but it's not, he's doing it as like a side gig, not really as a business. So that was a home run for us to be able to find that location and put that model there. And that place has kind of taken off ever since.
So talk to me about packaging and pricing. Like what does it cost to work with you?
We do everything by memberships. So we 90% of our members are on annual agreements, and so we do annual or month to month. To get started, you have to do 3 months. Most of the people coming in to see us are saying like, hey, I want to lose 15 or 20 pounds. So we don't do any like, hey, buy 10 session type thing. We do, hey, like that's totally fine. You could do month to month or an annual, whichever works best for you. But they have to start with 3 months first. After 3 months, they can progress to month. But in terms of the packaging, right now we just went through a price increase. So 2 semi-private sessions a week would be $420 a month.
Okay.
So, and the way that we do that is it's just billed monthly. And it gives them access to up to 2 sessions per month. So they're not doing it like, hey, you get 10 sessions and then purchase it again. Every month their account gets billed for their monthly billing and the sessions get added to their account. They don't roll over, but we let people make them up if they need to. So if you're a twice a week client and you go away for vacation, when you come back, if you want to do 3 times a week for the next 2 weeks, that's totally cool. But they don't carry over. So let's say you had 10 sessions that you didn't use and your annual renewal comes up, you can't use 10 sessions before signing up again. You have to renew the membership and move forward from there.
And what is you have higher end packages? I'm assuming, like just
yep.
Or does everybody train 2 times a week?
That's kind of our bread and butter. That's what kind of fits into most people's schedule.
Okay.
They'll supplement those 2 workouts by either our clients in both facilities have open access to the gym. So if they start with a program that we'd want them to lift 3 days a week. If they choose to still only do twice a week with a coach, they might come in, work with a coach on Monday, do their A program, Wednesday, do their B program, Friday, come back on their own and do their day A program again. So they come in to the front, grab their program. There's always a coach there. So we kind of pitch it as like they have unlimited access to open coaching, meaning it's not a scheduled session. Like this person's not going around with you for the whole hour. But if you forget like how to do a certain stretch or one movement, like you can ask like, hey, Sean, like, can you remind me what this hip flexor stretch is? And it's just usually, yeah, it's the one where you got your foot up and you're doing this. And like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. So yes, we do some one-on-one training, and then there's other packages that we include nutrition, but they're all done the same way. It's up to a certain amount of sessions per month, and done on an annual agreement.
And so at about 150 members, you're kind of cruising at that like 60 a month.
Yep, that's exactly where
type price point.
Yep, that's exactly where we're at. Yep,
and you get like pretty healthy margins off of that, right?
Yep. So we use a 44% type of model. We try to keep our payroll around those costs. So that works out well for the coach and it works out well for us. Like they know if I'm training, I don't have to sit here at one client every hour on an $85 an hour private session to try and make my money. I can train 12 clients in 3 hours and do just as well, if not better.
So when you say 44, you mean the trainer takes home 44% of
yep
all the
yep.
And how does that work? Oh, so 8 sessions divided by the member number, and then
yep.
that gives you
we break it down. So like where that number comes from is basically we would do we have a 5 a month membership as well for like people that might have been with us for a bigger part of the success too is the retention, obviously. So someone might train with us for 3 times a week when they first join, and then they start to know like how to read their program. They understand, hey, what we're getting after here, but they value the programming, having something individualized for them. They might downgrade their membership to just doing 5 sessions a month. So every time that they come in and get a program, they'll do 5 sessions with a coach to kind of go over it and then move on from there. That's $300. So that basically gets based off of like 60 a session for semi-private, and then we work backwards from the math that way.
So you know all your session rates, and then you're able to figure out what the coach makes.
Yep.
Depending on who they're training throughout the day.
You got it. Yep.
All right, awesome. So what I like about this model is that it's like lean. It doesn't require a ton of space to operate, and it is kind of like you coach me. I'm obviously guys, come on, sign up with Brian. But what I like about it is it's pretty lean, and you don't need a lot of people, and you can set it up where you can have like pretty decent staff that's around for a while. If they have if you have pretty decent client flow to them. What I don't like about it is the customization, right? Because you're offering like bespoke level training for not a personal training price point, and so across 300 members, you're writing 300 individual programs, right?
Yes and no. So we work from templates, right? So if phase one for a fat loss client, so another good way I heard it described is like everybody thinks they need their own special individualized program, which is only like kind of half true, but not everybody should be doing the same thing. So what I mean by that is that, hey, if we'll use our client avatar as, hey, it's a mom in their late 30s or 40s, haven't worked out in a few years, I want to get in shape, right? If I did whatever assessment you want to do, you want to do the functional movement screen, you want to do the TPI, whatever you want to do to see where they're at, I would guess that 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to start with a goblet squat, right? That's going to be their starting movement. So we, in phase one of fat loss programming for general fitness, it might just say squat 10 to 12 reps, rest 30 seconds, horizontal push 10 to 12 reps, rest 30 seconds. So now all the coach has to do is like, hey, what would be an appropriate squat movement for John in this phase? What would be an appropriate horizontal press? And that should only take a minute, right? If we've watched the person move during their evaluation, we should know like, hey, does this person need to start with bodyweight squats, or are they coming to us from an organized program for the last 6 years and they can front squat? Right? We're just picking, we're not sitting there and doing every single set, rep, and rest period customized down to the individual level. We're saying like, here's a fat loss template that we like to use for 16 weeks. Where does this person, what's their starting point? For someone who's, new to training, it might be bodyweight squats and incline push-ups on a bar, right? For someone who's advanced or has a strength training background, but now is looking to lose some fat, it might be barbell front squat and dumbbell bench, right? So it's customized to the person, but the overall template gives us a starting point. So we save a lot of time there.
And the thing I found horrifying was that you do this all by hand, right? Like it's all.
I do remember your first reaction when you were like, how do you track all this? And I still get that when I talk to other gym owners too. Like they always like, I feel like the anticipation is that I'm going to have like some secret software, and I'm like, Google Sheets. It's like, it's a drop down. My hesitation is having, so if we have 2 or 3 coaches, all with 3 or 4 people at a time, and I'm certainly not the expert on this, so I'm sure there might be something that exists, but my hesitation is like, now I need 12 iPads. Now, what if the iPad breaks? Well, where does that live? Now I got to do something else. And I know there some people had come back and said like, oh, well, there's these screens and like you could put it up there, and it's like, all right, well, what if that doesn't work? Like, what if that doesn't work? Or this person comes in a different, so there's always these logistical things that we ran into with tech that we didn't want to have everybody. We're trying to it's hard enough for us to get people to put down their phone for an hour and train. So we don't want to encourage it and be like, well, actually now your program's on your phone. And so we tried to remove that step. All the templates live. We just transferred them all over from Excel to Google Sheets. That was our big step. And so we just use those and print them out.
So I have news for you. I was in Nashville this weekend, and I was hanging out at, it was a mastermind for people who run like coaching groups. Mm-hmm. And it was run by this guy who has a series of auto body shops, and then he has a auto body coaching business. I don't want to divulge his exact numbers because I don't know if he does them publicly, but 8 figures of profit. Mm-hmm. So like this guy is printing.
Not bad.
And so part of the thing was we went around, we did a tour, and then we walked through like his various businesses, and he gave us some like operational tips. And the one thing he was like adamant about, he was adamant about 2 things. One was like no remote work, and then the second one is everything on paper. So he moved his entire shop off of like software for managing the actual like tickets to clipboard and paper.
I like it. I like this guy.
Everyone's like tactile. Everyone's touching. There's a sense of accountability. They're moving the clipboard onto the car. And so like it's no stone left unturned. He can like actually see the work happening, right?
And I never thought about that. I never thought about how actually holding the program makes a big difference in like that ownership. Like this thing is mine, right? It doesn't exist like somewhere else out there.
Even for like employee stuff, he's like, when you write somebody up, I put it in their file and there's a physical file. And so there's something about that he's every time he puts somebody in his group, like starts in the group, like that's the first thing he tackles.
There was a time too, like when I first started, I was writing them by hand because I had I didn't have any, I was just starting to train people, but like, even back then I was just writing it out and I'm like, here's your workout, and here we go.
So for all the people who are looking to buy Kilo but don't want to because we don't offer workout tracking, take it from this guy. Just use paper. It's the best workout tracking software that there is.
That is, just don't lose it.
Guaranteed to increase revenue. And so this guy was working with like, I think he had 8 different shops or something like that. So, it's scaled. So
yeah, I mean, in both locations use paper, for whether it's our general fitness clients or the athletes, they use paper.
That's wild. And so do you keep a client file like after they cancel? You got like 10,000 client files?
Yeah, there's a lot of files and a lot of old workouts. We don't keep them forever, but we'll keep them back at least for the year that they were there. And
so talk to me, if you got these 2 locations, everyone's on a semi-individualized programming, like how are you kind of monitoring everything, making sure like the coaching's getting done to standard and the programs are getting written to spec? Like seems like a lot of operational overhead when you're going from 1 to 2, a lot more so than just like a CrossFit gym.
To your point earlier, that one of the benefits of our system is that we do keep our coaches for a long time. Both of our head coaches in each facility have worked for us for 6 or more years. Sean, who's our head coach in Rumson, he's coached with me before I even owned a business. So he's familiar with the system and how we do things. And each facility has a head coach that's their responsibility. I just equate it to the restaurant business, right? You ever watch like Hell's Kitchen where Gordon Ramsay's like standing up there? He's not like cooking the food. He's just standing there and looking at him like, that's good. That's shit. Let's do that again. Like that's their responsibility. We try to get all of our coaches contributing to that program design process as early as we can. That doesn't mean that they're starting from scratch with someone. So that person might come in, I might do their evaluation. Now I'm like their case manager. I'm going to write John's initial program, but you train with Sean 3 days a week for the next month. It's now Sean's responsibility to go to phase 2 of our template and update it accordingly. If Sean was brand new, I would obviously monitor that. If I was the head coach, I'd monitor that at a little bit higher level. But if, I don't have to look at the head coach's programs right now. If they have a question, I'm available to them and I can help. But it's their job to monitor all the other stuff that's going out. So the way that works is the clients are filling out their programs. When they have like a week left in their program, there's a very fancy highlighted column on their paper. So when they get to that date, they know, put it into to be updated bin.
Okay.
And once it gets to the to be updated bin, our manager will make a copy of it, put it in the coach's folder. That coach goes home or does it, on their free time in the gym. We'll see how that person's doing, update it accordingly. To your point before, like, man, that sounds like a lot of work. It's really not. If phase 1 is 15 reps and phase 2 is now moves down to 10 reps and a few more sets, we just need to look like, hey, were they crushing it with their squats? Like, can they graduate now from body weight to goblet squat or from goblet squat to front squat? We work on putting all these systems in place where we have a base exercise like a goblet squat, and then we have 2 regressions and 2 progressions. Hey, if they can goblet squat, what's another way that we make that harder? Well, we go front squat. What if they don't have their mobility to get there? Okay, then they use the safety squat bar or they do double kettlebell. Cool. So that's the only decision that you're making at that point.
And so are these head coaches, are they comp more or is it the same comp as the other guys and they just get
you get the total 44, like you get that total compensation of 44% if you're handling all of the responsibilities of your client. So if you're a younger coach in the system and someone else is programming for you, you might start at like 30 to 33%. And then once you start to take more responsibility for that client, you work up to that top pay rate. So it's really the head coaches that are at 44, and other coaches in the system are going to be some tier below that, depending on what their responsibilities are. So that's how we kind of budget for that.
Got it.
We used to do it where like, hey, we're going to give you X for every program that you write. And it was just a nightmare of trying to track that and then back into 44. So we're like, listen, we'll give you 44% of the revenue, but this stuff has to be done. And we'll monitor that it's getting done rather than saying like, cause suddenly if you're like, hey, I'm going to give you $10 for every program that you write, it's like, John did 6 programs this month. Like, it's like, so like you have to figure out like, hey, we're just going to pay you for the responsibility of program design. If you mess a program up and have to redo it, that's on you. If you kill it and you're very efficient at it, well then you're going to be very efficient at it.
So you're just paying for the output.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Instead of like the hours.
We've played around with a couple of different ways because like I'm always focused on trying to figure out like, because I've been in as an employee, I've run this system too. Like I introduced this to a business that I was an employee of. So like I've seen both sides of like, well, how do you game that system? It's like, well, if you write a program every 3 weeks instead of every 6 weeks, you're killing it twice. Like, so it's like, hey, it should just be like, you're in charge of this person's program, like for their entire term of their membership.
So they're all 12 weeks now.
You got it. Yeah. Yeah.
They're all way longer.
He's been killing it. The guy's been front squatting for 8 months, but no, they do a great job with it.
Yeah. So I ran multi-location as well in the same area as you. I was a little farther north. So he's in suburban New Jersey. I was like New York City area. And I think the only way you can successfully run multi-location, the game's the operator, right? Like if you don't have somebody in there that's like acting like a true owner, there's just no way to scale. So I'm kind of surprised that you don't have like a full-on general manager in each location.
We have from a training standpoint, we have the head coaches. They operate in that role. In terms of like day-to-day client issues, scheduling, all that stuff, we have Lauren who oversees both facilities. She's able to handle both.
So she's your call center?
Yep. She handles any billing issue, any of that stuff. She crushes it with that. She handles our social. She handles any of those type of tasks she's on top of, and she's able to do it for both.
And is that an hourly or salary role?
It's a little bit of both. So like her regular stuff is salary, but then if we might give her a project and say like, hey, like I know this is going to take you more than whatever. So document your time and we'll pay X per hour for that.
And so who's selling?
That comes down to really just schedule. The head coaches are both capable. They both do no sweat intros. And then if that comes at a time that they're really busy, because obviously people want to train at the time they want to train, right? Mm-hmm. If the head coach, he's the head coach, he's going to have a full schedule at 8 and 9 a.m. If someone new wants to come in, I'm still in that role a little bit, but we're working on having Lauren be able to kind of do that as well. But usually it's the coach, usually it's the head coach's responsibility. And we try to book those on less popular days. Obviously Monday, Wednesday, Friday are our huge training days. If people are going to train 3 days a week, that's what they do. So we try to do evaluations, consults Tuesdays and Thursdays because there's more availability.
You just make more money by opening up your calendar, let people buy from you.
Yeah. It's well, if I had a bigger space, like the real opportunity with this is if you could handle, we're 3,000 square foot. And we have 2 to 3 coaches taking anywhere from 2 to 4 clients. There's only so much room. Like you run out of equipment space. It's just a numbers. If I could find a way to take 8, I would take 8. So if you're in a facility that's 6,000 square foot, like you don't have to keep it at 4. We keep it at 4 purely. We did 3 for a long time. And then COVID kind of forced us to do 4 because it was like, well, if I can't have at this time 2 coaches there with this, we'll have 1 coach be there, but take an extra person. Like that was the most efficient way. And then we were like, well, people liked it and the training didn't suffer. So we'll do 4.
So you've coached a decent amount of large group gyms and taught them how to kind of implement this model. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about how they screw it up.
They screw it up by not making the price point different enough and not focusing on if you're charging, let's say, $149 for your group, like semi-private can't be $199. That's not enough of a differentiator. And if it gets overrun, then it can't work. It's easier to think about how do I go from private to semi-private than group up to semi-private, because then all I'm saying is like, hey, I can give you the same exact service, right? I got you. Like one of the things that we go over is like they teach people how to do brain surgery and handle firearms with one person teaching like 10 people who've never held a gun before to shoot that way. Like I can handle body weight squats and push-ups, right? So the lead work is on making sure that you made all the right choices ahead of time and then filtering it that way. But in terms of from going to the group, is sticking it at non-busy times. They're like, oh, well, it'd be great if we could get this program off the ground at 1:30
11 a.m.
Right? Like when we're doing this, right? Like, oh, it'd be great. Like, oh, we'll just stick it there. No one signed up for it. It's like, well, does anybody come in at that time now? No. And it's like, all right, like you have to have a little bit of a leap of faith and know like, hey, if these are my busy times, and they themselves have to believe in the benefit of it, right? A lot of CrossFit owners, you would know this better than me, were CrossFit members, right? This is what they do. So, having them understand like, why would I want to progress to doing semi-private sometimes is a hard kind of jump, but picking the right times and charging enough money to make it worth it, and clearly communicating to the clients what the value of it is, right? Like, hey, you know how we have to like modify all this stuff for you in class every time, and that's kind of like frustrating. Like, dude, this is gonna solve that, right? Like, do me a favor, try it for a month. I'll write you the program, and like we'll like give it a shot and let's see how it works. We've never had anybody that comes in for an initial consult be like, nah, I don't want to do semi-private. Like they don't, if they're new, they're not going to even know any different. You're just going to say like, hey, I'm coming in. Can you help me? Yes, this is how we do this here.
I'm looking. Do you even mention group training on any of your sites?
Colts Neck has more of a group program than Rumson because for the reason I just described, we are so busy with semi-private that I would need. So if you do the math, right? Like if I have 2 or 3 coaches, all with 4 people at around $400 a month, it would have to be one hell of a class at that hour for me to switch that over for it to make sense.
Right.
So we didn't anticipate that when we opened. We went in with the same model, like you could do semi-private or group, and everybody did semi-private. So we're playing around with it now because honestly, I would like a little bit of that just means to me that we didn't charge enough, because if there was a big enough discrepancy between those prices at some point, even in a more affluent area, people would say like, well, I'll do this other option. But it's kind of got priced out. Like it would be so hard for me to now go back and try to offer a group membership there in any other way. So, but in Colts Neck, we do offer both because that's kind of how we started and we always had it there.
Yeah, it seems like you get married to one model. I can't think of a lot of people who were successfully majority of the revenue came from growth and then built like a strong semi-private. And I can't think of the opposite either.
It's very hard because it's hard to be great at either one. If I was going to design a new group fitness facility, I would lay it out because I'm going to run a new group class. So the amount of equipment that I would need, the way it was set up, the music that I was going to play, the coaches being mic'd up, all those things are things that you'd consider if I'm going to run a group environment, right? That doesn't play in semi-private, right? I have to have individual conversations through it. So like the music isn't blaring. It's loud enough that there's an energy or environment to it, but like I'm coaching. Right. It's not energy exchange anymore. It's not just like, hey guys, we're doing these 3 things, let's go, right? You're actually coaching. So like there's a little bit more that you can't, in my opinion, if I was to change Rumson to a group facility, which we would never do, I would have to invest in a bunch more equipment, lay it out a much different way so that it flowed better. But for semi-private, you're programming for each individual. So as long as you have 3 of everything, you're good.
Yeah, class caps matter, and the amount of space it takes to train somebody. Like the problem with the CrossFit group model when you get to a certain size, like we were constrained. Our first facility was like 2,400 square feet. And if you have something that's like, you need a barbell and there's 20 people in the class, that's 20 barbells, 20 boxes, 20, and then there's just like no space to work out. And then everybody needs all 3 pieces of equipment. And if you're comparing that to like an Orange Theory or a Barry's or an F45, like they just have these little circuits, they run the same circuits, and what it takes you for 20, they can get 50 in there. So they're just at a huge operational advantage because they can pack out their main time. So
Yep. And their focus isn't necessarily on nor is it really ever on limit strength. So you never have to have like a group of 25 people trying to find their 3RM on a deadlift.
Right.
It's like that would be hard to do.
and just the amount of weight, like the cost to buy that amount of weight.
Yeah. So for us, it's good because like we kind of get the best of both worlds. Like you might come in and have, trap bar deadlift and some sort of overhead press, and someone else might be coming in and doing, front squats and whatever. I'm just stepping back and coaching you both. Like, so the way that we do it is like, if we're taking 4 people per hour, then we usually make sure that we have 4 half racks in each facility. So that's enough, because if you have front squat and dumbbell bench and someone else has some sort of squat, whatever, while you're doing the other thing, the weight can get switched out and everybody kind of works together. And it's almost kind of like being in a weight room in a sense, where everybody has their own program and kind of works together. So.
Yeah, it is kind of more of a collegiate vibe, isn't it? Where you just walk in and you know who's there. And
yeah, like the 9 o'clock crew, and that helps with retention as well, right? Like you don't want to be like you're coming in, you're there, even though you're not doing the same thing. Like you train with your 9 o'clock crew, and you're like, I don't want to miss out on that. Like, so that helps as well.
So you recently bought a building. Maybe
we closed this week.
Oh, so you are buying a building?
Buying, yes. Because apparently there was an environmental thing that the previous owner bought it cash.
Dry cleaner?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And it was it came back clean, but it was like they were like, hey, now we need you to do this, and it was a lot of money, and we were like, hey, listen, he bought the building for cash before, so they just he didn't need any of that stuff. So, but finally we're closing this week. So, yep.
So talk us through the process.
Not fun, but
you started this what?
I think I sent you
when did we talk? Maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah. Well, we made sure that when we first signed our lease, that we at a minimum had the right to we had agreed upon price, and in the future had a right to first refusal. So it's still at that negotiated price that we had before. So then
this was in 2020 when you negotiated it?
Yeah, when we first signed the lease, we were like, hey, because he wanted to know initially if we were just flat out in the beginning interested in buying the building. This was you weren't getting anything done for that if you told people it was going to be a gym. Remember, we came into that COVID was just ending. So oh yeah, here's a bunch of money for fitness. It was probably not available at the time. So we went in, and then once, it took off a lot faster than any of us were expecting. And we were like, you know what, if we can make this work, let's do it. And we just slowly and steadily went through the process. Surprisingly, the SBA portion of it was easy. And then the other half that they shop out to a bunch of different banks was the part that was like a pain in the ass over and over. We ended up with 3 different banks, I think. It would get approved, and then something would come up, but the good thing is that SBA portion has been locked in since whenever we did it, which was probably a year ago.
So you still have the interest rate from
that? At least for that portion of it. The anything that we went out with an individual bank has changed, but that was good to know, because I wasn't even aware, my background isn't in a ton of business. So when I think you were the one who initially told me to start looking there you introduced me to someone, and that opened us up to a huge line of credit with them, which is great if we ever have any other projects that want to come up, which was fantastic. We haven't done anything with it yet, but it's good to know that it's there. So we close next week. Once that's done, we'll kind of see where we go from there. Learning on that aspect.
We're interviewing this mystery individual next month, so you're gonna get the introduction as well, dear viewer. So let's talk about it. So you signed the lease. It was in 2020. This is for your second location, right? Mm-hmm. And so you agreed to buy the building for what? If you don't want to tell us the exact number, give us.
It was just over $1 million.
And so you knew, you only paid rent for a year, right?
Yeah.
Before you're like, mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely want to buy.
Yeah, we were like, hey, let's see. We had he gave us 3 months to kind of get started, because we said, listen, the other guy had the gym set up. It was not set up. It was a space that he set up for him and his friends to work out. So it had a couple older rogue racks in there, all mismatching dumbbells. And I'm like, this is an area where if you're going to charge what we want to charge, it has to look you can't be oh, we got these from Dick's.
Yeah.
He
had a credit card investor maxing out.
Yeah. So or no, actually the opposite. He was a ridiculously wealthy independent dude.
Oh, right.
And just didn't care.
Oh, so
so he was just this is fine. But anyway, so we had to spend some money, and we were like, listen, can you give us a couple months? And he was cool about it. But we covered the rent within a month. We were with getting everybody signed up and rolling. We were everything was paid. And we were like, dude, this is, and to give you an idea, even if in the future, if we wanted to convert it, let's say we were hey, we're done with this gym stuff, it would crush as a restaurant or something. It's right on the main strip of this one area in town. The average home price in that town is 1.3 million. So like we're not in an area.
A lot of hedge fund people live there.
Oh yeah. So it's not an area where like, things could swing and, there people are buying lots in that town that have nothing on them for 800,000 and then putting up a $1.9 million home on it. And
Right.
so
they're not batting an eye when you tell them it costs $400 to work out.
No. Yeah. There's certain times where I'm like, crap, we're not charging enough.
I'd agree. And so it was $1 million. And so the lessons, if you're like a gym owner who's expanding or going into a new location, like some of the things that you did that was unique. So they had an agreed upon price when they signed the lease of if I buy the building, it's gonna be for this much money, right? And you had signed how long of a lease?
We had a 5-year lease with a 5-year option.
Yeah, so it was basically freezing the purchase price of the building for.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't for the entire term. It was like he gave us like 2 years.
Okay.
So, but still, I mean, to your point, like if he had saw how well we were doing afterwards, and we were like, we'll figure out the number. I'm sure. Personally, we probably would have agreed to a higher price because of how well it was going. It would have been an interesting situation where we might have almost priced ourselves out of it because of how well it was going, ironically.
And in that time period that he had the price locked up, this is literally like peak COVID, everything in the real estate market went up like 50 to 100% depending on what market you're in. Mm-hmm. I know the Shore was absolutely bananas. I'm sure
and they did a beautiful job. So, I mean, the picture that you have up on the computer there is the inside of it. Like all of that's brand new. All the ceiling, any of the ductwork, all the air conditioning, the heat, all that stuff. Like they had completely renovated everything in there. So the stuff that I know nothing about, I'm not an expert with in terms of like the building was all done. All we had to come in and do was like make it, and that's actually a pretty old picture. So that has the old racks and stuff in it. So that was before we even like.
I think it was a little more blacked out the last time I was in it.
Flipped it, yeah.
And so the second thing you did, you had a right of first refusal. So explain what that is.
So just if he had another offer, if someone walked up to him on the street and said, "Hey, I want to buy your building for 1.3," right? We had a chance to agree upon it and give him that same price before he could take that offer. So and actually it was like we since we had the price agreed upon, he couldn't even accept technically a higher offer. Like if we wanted it at that, which is basically 1.1. At any point in those 2 years, if we wanted it at 1.1, it was done. Like he couldn't even accept an higher. After that, we had right to first refusal, which then it gets into
after that term expired.
Right, correct, yeah. So after that point, it became, hey, you have to give us a chance to say no first before taking anything else.
And most landlords will say yes to that deal. Mm-hmm. So I think it's pretty rare that you find somebody who will like sell the building at an agreed upon price in the lease. Like that was a good find. But yeah, it'd be rare to have a landlord that would disagree to a right of first refusal. And if you're not in a super competitive market, you can find one who does basically. So then the next step in the process, you realize the location started killing it. You knew you wanted to buy it. So what'd you do? Like, what'd you have to put together to get this done? Because you weren't sitting on like 1.1
yeah,
ready to go on the building, right?
No. So basically, we just went through the process. Adam, who's my business partner, went through most of that. It was contacting. We started through the SBA. They have a program there that we were fortunate enough to kind of qualify for, where basically they'll qualify you up to a certain portion of the loan. And then from my understanding, they essentially shop out the rest to other banks to kind of cover the difference. So we'll actually have 2 loans on the property, but to us, it's all, it's one payment or whatever. So then it's just like, to me, it was no different than, doing a commercial loan. It was just get all the stuff together, fill out the same paperwork 800 times.
Yeah.
Luckily, our other facility had been operating for at that point 7 years. So our financials from that were steady. We weren't like a brand new business trying to show that we could do this. So that was helpful. And then, it's like anything else, hurry up and wait. Hey, we need this paper and we need it this day, and just go through it through there.
And so how much did you end up having to put down? Because I know with 7A loans, you can do a little bit less than like a traditional loan.
I'd have to get back to you on that, because the way we formed the new, and I'm open book with it. We formed a new LLC to house that. So we have Aspire Holdings for that. And we have a different partnership agreement, me and Adam in Aspire Fitness. But the deal was like, hey, like whatever this upfront cost is, you do, and then we go 50-50. Because if we take the money out of Aspire, that's going to be at a different percentage. Now, every dollar that if we take it out of the business is going to be at our original split. So the best way is just to do this going forward. So I'm being honest, I actually don't know. So,
Right.
so
Adam is the numbers guy, we're guessing.
Yep, absolutely. And I knew for me, I mean, at a glance of it, it was like, hey, what's this do to our monthly payment? Well, it goes up about $750 to $1,000. I was like, all right, fine. Then there's nothing that could happen in the business, you know, that would ever come down to where that number wouldn't be doable.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it can be as low as like 5 to 10% down. And
that sounds about right. Yeah.
The SBA will take the other 50, and then you got to find a private lender to do 40.
Yep. And it ends up being like a balloon payment after 5 years, I believe it is. So
you got to refi.
The goal is just to, I think the way that we mapped it out is to pay it off in 10 years and be done with it. And then we just have that as an aside. That's what I know that's what the numbers came out to when we sat down and went over it.
And so what do you think the building's worth today?
I would say probably right around what there was a lot. So the hardest part, and we went through this when we were trying to get the loan, there's no comparables like in our area because selling commercial real estate in Rumson is extremely rare. So they were we had to kind of find other buildings in Rumson that were, so there's a lot right across from us that's a mixed use. So it has a residential property on it, but then it has a art showroom on it. That was like in total need of getting just knocked down and redeveloped. That went for 1.1. So we would assume this one, with it all done and renovated, would be slightly more than that. I'm not a real estate person. I'd have to figure that out on that one. But that was a struggle point. Now that I remember, is trying to find. They were pulling, hey, this size facility from like Keyport, and it's like they were like, oh well, this one was only 700,000. I'm like, yeah, it's like falling apart in the middle of nowhere. I'm like, this is in arguably one of the most affluent towns in New Jersey, like, and on the main strip. So I would imagine if we had to have it go through, that it would be comparable to that, if not slightly over.
Keyport Rumson's like Dollar General and Target, just for
it's a big discrepancy, pulling those comps from a main building in Rumson.
So are you done with 2? Let's start there. Are you gonna open a 3rd? What's the?
I mean, we have a couple things that we're considering. 3 would be hard because right now our 2 head coaches in those facilities are fantastic. We don't currently have someone on staff that can operate at their level. So to your point of scaling it, like that's kind of where we're at right now, is like we would need one of these coaches that's, in a junior role right now to kind of step up. The decision would be like, hey, do I want to go back and get another one started? It has opened my eyes to a better opportunity, being rather than trying to scout out a new location for a new gym, like, oh, no one ever thought to put a gym here before. Like, looking for a place that like, hey, people seem to be happy like with going, like with the idea of this area being a gym, but maybe the person that's running it has no idea what they're doing, and going to them and saying like, hey, like, you have any interest in selling? Like, because I think that would be a model. And from listening to you talk about some similar things in the past, would be a much easier route than like, hey, we're going to scout out these towns in New Jersey and figure out like where a good spot for a gym would be. It's like we can find a spot that's been there for a while, but maybe is struggling, and install our model into it. Would be if I had to figure where we'd go next, it'd be something like that.
So I've done this twice. I've done this 3 times with various partners. So with varying degrees of success. So the most successful one that I did was a cold outreach to a CrossFit gym. It just had absentee owners. They had like bad reviews, bad website. It was dirty. We went and took a class. The coaching was awful, and we basically bought them for the value of the equipment. And so we went in. We had a good operator. We put them in. Great turnaround. Sold it for a few years later for 6-7 times what we bought it for. And then we did another one that was a different gym chain that went out of business. We went in there. ran a model similar to yours, a semi-private group training, and we were able to turn that around. Unfortunately, didn't have a huge exit because we didn't control the real estate. So the landlord basically kicked us out at the end of our lease term and increased the rent by like 75%. He didn't want a gym tenant anymore. So, while it cash flowed well, it was not like some life-changing exit or anything like that. And then the third one was like the worst, the second worst mistake as an operator I made. So we found one that was a gym, but then the gym went out of business, and we rented that one. And we thought, hey, we're good marketers. We're gonna be able to turn this thing around, and we weren't. We chose the wrong operator, which was our first mistake. Like you're not getting out of the hole there. And then, we just weren't able to drive the type of traffic for it to make it work. So like if I was advising somebody starting over, if you wanted to like buy, do an acquisition expansion, I would probably say find someone that's paying the bills, just scrape and buy. And then there's a lot of catalysts. So things you can do better. So you can clean the bathrooms, you can put some good photos on the internet, you could run some ads, you can find some better coaching or improve the existing coaching. And so that way, if you just do nothing, better, you're at least going to be able to pay your rent. Or like some of the more expensive mistakes I made, there wasn't a active operating gym in there. And so, who knows why? Some like locations hit
and those were all things that we took into consideration when we knew we wanted to jump at Rumson, is that we're one block from the high school. So every single high school kid walks right by the gym when they finish, because everybody walks home. It's a small town. We are right on the main strip where every single person drives down to go to any of the restaurants that are there. So it was like our marketing budget so far for Rumson has been zero. Like we haven't spent $1 on paid ads. It's all been word of mouth. Now, like before when I was first starting out, it was like, to find this kind of like off the beaten path places, you can save on rent. And like, if you're good enough, people will find you. Like, and I don't think that those things aren't true. Like at a certain level, like if you're if you're Eric Cressy, if you're the baseball guy, you could train on the moon and people will come and train. But if you're general fitness and the average person doesn't know, like being on the main street in the most expensive town in the state, that doesn't hurt. Yeah. And the rent wasn't that much higher than what we were paying in Colts Neck. So we were like, hey, like we have to find a way to make this work. There's no other training gym in this town. And luckily we were right. So like I think all those things were factors when we came in. It's kind of what made us like we overpaid for the equipment that was in the gym when we took over, but it was all just opportunity costs that we knew. Like we've made that 10 times over by now.
The guy's still operating, or the guy was operating when you bought it?
Yes, but he at that point, because of COVID, just said screw it. He put a key box on the outside and was like, hey guys, give me $200 if you want to come in and use it. And like you would literally open the door and it was like the Wild West, like a dust bunny would just like roll through. And like I was surprised that people in that town would like tolerate that. Like I was like, how do you guys train here? Like, and the best story I have about that place is that we did the deal on a Friday. Now we knew it was opening. It was already operating as a 24-hour, like come whenever you want, as long as you have the key code. So I was like, hey, one of us has got to be there in the morning on Saturday, because there wasn't the time to like change the locks. And I was like, so I'll come in. So I come in and there's a guy there that I recognize. His son wrestles. I work with a lot of wrestlers in the area. So I was like, oh, hey, how's it going, man? He's like, oh, yeah, it's great. I was like, he's like, just so you know, like we bought the place. He's like, really? He's like, oh, good for you, man. I was like, yeah. So listen, like if you're going to work out today, like go ahead and get a workout in. I don't want to like, disrupt you. And then we'll go over what our plan is kind of going forward. He goes, I work here. He's like, I got 3 clients coming in right now. And I'm like,
and you had no clue?
No, zero clue. There was like, this is how weird this like whole deal was. I was like, all right, well, go ahead. I was like, just like, okay. And so he was just there. He was just like,
I had no clue.
The owner didn't tell him that he sold the place, because it was more like hey, he would Venmo like, hey, this is how much I did this month. I'll give y'all Venmo you whatever. So he didn't. The owner didn't tell him, and like I didn't know to tell him. I thought he was just there to work out. So I was like, oh yeah, man, go ahead. And he's like, I got people coming in like 15 minutes.
So how many rogue employees did you have?
Just that one. We had one great employee. She's no longer with us. She was a huge help to us when we first took over. advice to anybody who is doing something like that. If there's somebody who's a hard worker, but maybe just didn't have the operational efficiency around them to help them, like if you can keep them, great. But she was a huge help to us on like helping us transition and explaining to people, like, cause she knew enough about training to know like, hey, these guys are legit. Like this is for the better. It just wasn't for her. She was like, she had 2 other jobs. She just liked training on the side. Like, you know what? I train a couple people. It's fun. So like when we were like, hey, we need you here from 5:30 to noon. She was like, I appreciate it. That's just not what I'm looking for. So, but she stayed for like 6 months and helped us kind of like get things ironed out. So just those 2, but I knew about her.
So you got the 2 gyms. They're cash flowing well. Now you have the real estate. You're gonna be building equity there. What's next for you?
That's a good question. So that's I just had a baby, as you know. So
I do.
Getting a little bit more efficient with my time is the first step. But really, this is the first time now that I've been able to kind of remove myself from day-to-day stuff and really even have time to think about that. We have an opportunity with a local, it won't matter, with a local community college that is interested in having us just come in and take over like the operations of their facility. They built out a new facility before COVID happened, and they were like, well, this sucks. And they have the facility itself in terms of the structure is new, but the equipment and stuff is like from the 30s.
Yeah.
So they're looking for someone to come in and operate that. So we're currently running. I'm interested on your thoughts about that later, but we're currently looking at their numbers now and seeing if there's a way that we can. The goal there being, can I get in and operate a training business at 0 overhead?
Because that sounds really nice.
Because their goal is, can our staff get a great rate and can our students use it? The students all pay a fee. That's if they're, when they look at their tuition bill, right, it just says fees and
Right.
$387. Something of that is allotted to fitness. Well, if they have 2,000 students and the rent's $10,000, like, well, then we just need $5 from each of them. And now we're operating at, essentially net zero because it gets cleaned by their facility, like all that kind of stuff. So if we're happy to staff it if now we can have a rent-free place to try to grow a training business, right? Because there's plenty of employees there. It's still in Lincroft, which is a nice town where people would be interested in knowing. So there's things to consider, but that's the thing that we're looking at right now. But I just keep my eye open for, like you said, if there's businesses that I've seen have been there for a decent amount of time but don't seem to be having any traction, like would they be interested in selling? So I'll have to pick your brain on approaching those places.
And I'm also a new dad. I think we've talked about that on here before. I was really thankful I started my gyms when I was pretty young. So if you're like someone who is thinking about, like, you haven't jumped into fitness entrepreneurship yet, like my advice would be start earlier than you need. Maybe Brian can weigh in on that. But
absolutely, I was between 30 and 31. I'm 38 now. Yeah, so back then I was 30, 31, and not sugarcoating it. There were days where I'd open the gym at 5:30. By the time the place was cleaned at night before the next day, it was 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. Come back and do it again. I could never do that now. It would be impossible. I had a business partner when we first opened in Colts Neck, and within, I want to say, right when we first, like, I say made it, and what I mean by that is, like, we were like, holy crap, like, we can give ourselves a check. Like,
I'm rich.
Yeah, he was like, hey, my wife wants to move to Florida, and I was like, all right. So then after that period, I was like by myself. So like that was right around the time, like when your mother-in-law came in. Like there was a point where he was there right when she kind of started, and then maybe a few months later, his wife was like wanted to move to Florida, and we had just like all the hard part. Well, I mean, there's a lot of other hard parts, but that initial hard part of like, is this thing even going to work, had just stopped. And he was like, hey, I just got to tell
buy
you,
this guy out.
I'm moving to Florida. Yeah, luckily, like. At that point, it wasn't worth anything. Yeah. So it was like, hey, like if you want to quit, like you have to pay me essentially. Like, like you have to pay to leave here. But no, we were able to work that out and everything. So it was all for the best. Like it was probably better that way anyway, because at that point, to the point that you just made, his family was just starting. So I could see like him probably saying like, man, I don't know if I can, hack this and still be able to handle all the other things that go into that.
Yeah, that like as soon as the first kid came out, that risk-seeking behavior just like goes out the window because you just get a hard hit of reality that there's just 20 years of expensive shit you're on the hook for, and it's like a different level of responsibility. So take big risks when you're young. You know, U.S. bankruptcy law, not that bad.
Yeah, I was like, I could always go back to work and coaching under somebody else. Like that's where I left from a system that I was doing that. So I was like, there's always opportunities to do that. So.
I found out today in Texas they can't steal your house or your car.
There you go.
So you just put all if you're going under, you take a big loan, you can't pay it. That's what you do. Big house, big car in Texas, and then 401ks and IRAs.
I don't know how it happened, but I get like targeted ads on Instagram now for like houses. Like there's these accounts that'll show you like, look at this $400,000 mansion in Texas. It's like it's got 7 pools, and it's like this could all be yours for $400,000.
They must think you're going under. You need a domicile. You need a domicile in Texas.
In a moment of stress, I must have Googled like, what would it cost to move to Texas? And now I'm targeted.
Florida's the same way. You can hide all your assets in your house, and so. Great place to be a criminal.
We have not that they're criminals, but we have a few of our clients that have moved. Adam's brother moved to Florida. They all live down there. I'm not even sure of the town, but like the real estate down there is crazy too, right? Like I know like they literally at one point didn't even have the property built yet. And it was already like appreciated by like 30%, 40%. Like it was crazy what they were like. And the house wasn't even finished.
Yeah, we bought our house February 1st of 2020 is when we closed. And I remember talking to my wife saying like, oh my God, we're going to go down in history as like buying a home the worst possible time. And then just turned out to be the best possible time. Luckily what we did as well, because if you bought during that time, you're kind of like trapped in your house because it's so much more expensive. Everything like tripled.
Yeah.
We ended up buying the house across the street from us as well. So
Sweet.
I have a guest house when people come by. So when
that's good to know.
When you come to visit for the next
perfect.
in-person podcast, I got to post that. How's you?
Yep.
Anyway, if you are advising a young fit pro or young gym owner, right? Because a lot of people watch this show, they'll see people doing these big numbers and owning the real estate, and they don't kind of see the 10 years of getting kicked in the balls that went into it. If you were advising someone who was starting over from scratch, what steps would you tell them to take if they wanted to do it faster than you did? Get
help in the beginning. There was a lot of figuring it out on your own that kind of takes place, and you just it seems like you're saving money by doing that. By trying to like, hey, figure this out. But there are plenty of people out there that have done this time and time over again that can help you. They've made all those mistakes. Get some help in the beginning to try and start on the right foot. Have someone make sure that your numbers are right from the beginning. Because if you get your numbers wrong in the beginning, you're going to spend a lot of time. When we first opened in Colts Neck, it was to train 3 times a week, which is essentially what we'd call unlimited. It was only $329. And, you can do the math on what that comes out to per session. And, and that was like a model that was current at the time. And it was just kind of pulled out of thin air. It wasn't based on anything. And then like, you're like, oh, this is going really well until like you have to raise rates on everybody and go back and do those things. So make sure that the numbers are in place first, and just don't have the expectations. Like it took, 7 years and a lot of extenuating circumstances for us to be in the position to purchase the building that we're in. And it's the best way I can put it is like, just keep focusing on the things that are within your control. Like I was at the time that we first opened in Colts Neck, I was an employee at a gym, but I was running the same business model as I'm running now. I went to the owner and said like, hey, I think that this is a better way for us to start working with clients. Do you mind if I take it and run with it? Yes. Okay. So we got that going. I was pitched the place in Colts Neck from the nutritionist that we networked with and where we got our supplements. He's like, hey, this guy runs a gym in Colts Neck. He stopped showing up and like hasn't paid his rent. Like the owner of the building's a client of mine. He's looking for someone to go in. Like, would you be interested? And it was like, yeah, I had money set aside. I wasn't out there actively looking for the perfect place. I was like, hey, it's close enough to where we are. Like I'd worked in that area before. So we jumped out on opportunity. Same thing with Rumson. It was like, hey, like if we had just, if I was looking for that opportunity, I would have never found it. It was the fact that we just kind of like kept working, kept growing, making sure that we were doing the right things with money. And then it was like, same thing. One of the clients that I was seeing me once a week was doing his program in that gym on other days because he didn't want to come. It's like it's close, but it's not. Like in the summer, you don't want to drive from Rumson to Colts Neck. It could take you 45 minutes. When on a good day, it could take 15. So he was like, hey, like the guy this gym that I'm training in is like, he's looking to get out. Like, would you be interested? Like, okay, yes, like we could do that. Like, and just, that would be it really. I mean, I know it's kind of a long-winded ramble, but hopefully there's some sort of advice in there.
Get help, stay in your lane, wait for opportunities to come to you and swing at the pitches.
Don't get distracted by the hundreds of other things that are going on in our industry. Like if I decided I was going to try to compete with what I would consider to be the gyms that are doing the best job at group fitness right now, I can't. Right. So it's the whole like blue ocean thing. Like no one's doing what we're doing in terms of like a business model and semi-private. So I'm going to keep fishing there. Like, there's if I Googled gyms right now in the area, I'm sure 9 out of 10 of them are going to be group fitness related.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not, the odds that I'm going to stand out in that market and be different are going to be a lot harder than if I can focus on the individual customization type stuff that we do with semi-private. And that's worked well for us. So if you're crushing it, stay with what you're crushing at. Don't feel like you have to do all these other different things because you see other people doing well with other things.
Well, Brian Bott, Shaper of Moms, thank you for coming on for the first in-person Gym World Worldwide. Appreciate it.
Man.
Guys, be sure to like, subscribe, and tune in next week.